Previously, on A Love That Lingered, Arthur made the long ride to Grace's family estate, not to claim her hand, but to ask for her company. He stood before her parents with rare humility, explaining that he wished for Grace to live at Caldwell Manor with him and his mother, not as a betrothed, but as a companion, free to decide their future when they were older. After careful thought, her parents placed the choice in Grace's hands. This is episode 10, The White Manor. The carriage wheels hummed softly over the gravel road, a steady rhythm that matched the fluttering in Grace's chest. Weeks had passed since Arthur's visit, and now she sat alone, her travel trunk neatly tucked at her feet. The countryside rolled by, familiar green fields giving way to stretches of golden pasture, the autumn sun painting long shadows across the hills. Grace had only ever seen Caldwell Manor once before, that fateful night of Lord Caldwell's funeral. But it had been shrouded in darkness, the air heavy with grief. Today was different. The day was bright, the air crisp with the scent of pine and distant smoke from chimneys. And as the carriage crested the last hill, she saw it properly for the first time. The manor stood tall and dignified, its white facade gleaming in the pale sunlight. Black shutters framed every wide window, and the stone steps leading to the great front doors were swept clean. Even from a distance, it looked like a place that had weathered years without losing its grace. Her breath caught. It was large, yes, but not cold. The gardens, though colors changing as the autumn chill settled in, were clearly cared for, and the drive curved elegantly through them like a ribbon. The sight stirred something in her, a quiet thrill of curiosity and nervous anticipation. This was to be her new home. Arthur was waiting at the foot of the steps, his posture formal but his eyes warm when he caught sight of her. His coat was dark, the kind of well-tailored wool that spoke of nobility, but there was an unpolished boyishness in his smile. The front doors opened before Grace had even stepped from the carriage, and half a dozen staff members appeared, each dressed neatly in black and white. The Caldwell household ran like clockwork, and though their presence was courteous, their eyes carried the flicker of curiosity. Arthur greeted Grace with a gentle clasp of her hand, the kind that lingered half a second longer than politeness required. "Welcome to Caldwell Manor, Grace," he said. "I hope the journey was kind to you." "It was," she replied, her voice softer than intended. "It's even more beautiful than I remember." Before she could say more, a voice from behind the line of staff drew her attention. "This way, Miss Everly. I'll see your things to your room." A young man stepped forward, perhaps just a year or two older than Grace. He was lean but strong, his dark brown hair neatly kept, his eyes a clear blue that seemed to carry warmth and amusement all at once. "This is Oliver," Arthur explained. "He's been in my family's employ since he was, 10? 8, Oliver corrected with a slight grin. Though employ is a generous word for a boy who mostly got underfoot. Arthur gave him a look halfway between fondness and exasperation. "In any case, he's been here longer than most, and will see to anything you might need. Consider him a guide to both the manor and, me if you wish." Grace smiled, feeling the stiffness of her arrival ease. "Then I'm in good hands." From that moment, Oliver proved an easy companion. He walked her through the manor's winding halls, pointing out the grand dining room with its glittering chandeliers, the library lined with dark wood and countless books, and the sunroom where Arthur's mother, Ethel, often sat with her embroidery. Grace noticed how Oliver's manner was both respectful and comfortable, as though the manor had shaped him as much as Arthur's family had. Lady Caldwell herself was waiting in the drawing room when they returned from the tour. She was exactly as Grace remembered from the funeral, delicate in frame but steady in presence, her light hair gathered in an elegant coil. She rose to greet Grace with a warmth that felt immediate. "My dear," Ethel Caldwell said, taking Grace's hands, "you are most welcome here. I hope you'll think of this as your home." "I will, my lady, thank you," Grace replied, meaning it. Over the following days, Grace learned her place in the household rhythm. Mornings began quietly, with breakfast in the smaller dining room. Arthur was often gone soon after, disappearing into his office, where papers, ledgers, and meetings seemed to consume most of his day. Lady Caldwell encouraged Grace to take walks, read, or join her in visiting the village market when weather permitted. Still, there were moments when Grace felt the absence of Arthur keenly. She would pass the closed door of his study and hear the low murmur of his voice with advisors, or see him at the end of a long hall, bent over documents. She knew the work was necessary. He was, after all, learning to be the head of his family. But part of her longed for the moments when his eyes would light at the sight of her. Arthur, for his part, carried that guilt quietly. He wanted to be by her side, to share in the novelty of her new home. But duty pressed in from all angles. In the evenings, when they could steal a moment together in the drawing room or over a late-night cup of tea, he found himself searching her face for any sign of unhappiness. One evening, a week into Grace's stay, the first snow began to fall, light and quiet. The manor felt softer in its hush, the firelight pooling in the drawing room where Grace sat with Oliver, laughing over one of the manor's older books that had been scribbled in by some long-forgotten hand. Arthur entered quietly, his shoulders drooping from the weight of his day. Grace looked up immediately, her smile blooming in a way that made his breath catch. Oliver noticed too, and with a subtle excuse, closed the book and slipped away. Arthur crossed the room, standing before the fire for a moment before turning to her. "I've been neglecting you," he said plainly. "You've been doing your duty," she countered gently. "That's not the same," he replied, taking a seat beside her. The firelight caught the gold in his hair, softening his expression. "I asked you here because I wanted you to be part of my life, not to watch it from across the hall." Grace reached for his hand, and though it was calloused from riding and writing alike, it closed over hers with quiet warmth. "Then let's find the moments we can," she said, "even if they're small." For a long moment, they simply sat in the glow of the fire, the snow tapping softly at the windows. Later that night, Grace lay in her bed, the manor silent around her. From somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard the faint creak of footsteps in the hall. Too slow to be a servant, too measured to be chance. She sat up, listening. The sound faded, and she told herself it was nothing. But the stillness that followed felt almost watchful. And in another wing of the house, in the shadowed servants' quarters, Oliver paused by the window, watching the snow fall, his thoughts unreadable.